State Valkyries defense has catapulted them to the top of the WNBA standings.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm Clea Butler, the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. And joining with me is my co-host, Sophia Jones, the radio analyst for the Portland Fire. What we are jumping into today, we're going to talk about the WNBA Power Rankings. Minnesota is sitting at the top. That is no surprise there. But some shakeups towards the bottom as we are quickly approaching our playoff push here. We also have a preview of some of the top games tonight, one of the big ones being the Atlanta Dream going up against the Las Vegas Aces. But before we get into that, we need to talk about how Golden State, to me, has quietly kind of made a rise. And a lot of that is, we've talked about it all season long, the fact that they have been able to keep games ugly and keep teams well below their averages throughout the season. And I think this game that we just saw between the Dallas Wings is a perfect example of that, because they beat the Wings 78-70. 70 is definitely on the lower end compared to what the Wings, this is a team that can put up some offense now. This is much lower compared to what we have seen them at. Obviously, Dallas has had some struggles as of late. However, that doesn't discredit what Valkyries have been able to do, and now are sitting just second in the standings behind the Minnesota Lynx. And again, I credit a lot of that due to the defense that they've been able to show.
100%. And you said it, where they just have a knack for making games ugly and being the team to grind it out more. And against the Dallas Wings, Dallas shot 45%, only 23% from three. So that was the biggest burden. They were not connecting from the three, weren't even getting up as many attempts as they usually do, also having 18 turnovers. But when your primary offense is Paige Beckers, who you didn't even have as an efficient of a night that we're used to seeing, you're putting yourselves in a really good position. And the Valkyries, they just do enough to stifle you on defense. And then coming down the other way, they'll get downhill and either finish at the rim, spray it out for three. There are 12 of 36 from three this game, so 33%. But they shoot so high volume that they end up connecting a lot of times, oftentimes than not, more than their opponent. And that's how they've been able to win so many of these games. They were led in scoring by Gabby Williams with 23 points, also 7 rebounds, 4 steals. And her leadership and defense, and also the offense that she provides as well, is another reason why this Golden State Valkyries team has really been able to take this leap in their second season of existence, which is just so impressive. And you talk about how they've been catapulted towards the upper tier of those standings. It was almost like they started off that way in the season, and then they've just stayed there. I feel like they've been second or third for like the majority of this WNBA season. And like I said, just really, really impressive on what this group has been able to achieve and how Coach Nakase has coached them into the positions that they are now. Because that's another thing. These defensive schemes, the players are carrying them out, but it's her game plan that's really allowing them to succeed. And her basketball mind is, I think, a really underrated thing that people aren't talking about as much when you're talking about the Valkyries' success.
Yeah, you honestly took the words like out of my mouth, because I just recall talking to her last season, and thankfully we get to see the Valkyries this Friday. Thankfully for me, maybe not for everybody else, but I like seeing the Valkyries. But I just remember talking to her, and she's just so passionate about what she's talking about. Like, she will really sit, like, you could ask her a quick question and she will sit there and really go in depth on just her thought process behind it, why she thinks it's going to work, how it could possibly not work. It's just, you can tell she is constantly scheming in her head on how to make this team better or how certain things are going to make them more efficient, but it pays off so well. And I think one of the big things that stood out about what she said was, she got cut from the WNBA as a player, but obviously not as a coach. So she's been absolutely making the most of this. But, you see a lot of not a lot, but you talk about, 3-and-D players, let's say. But to kind of have like a 3-and-D team is a little bit different, which is just, again, a lot of concepts that she's been able to develop. I mean, kind of throughout the league right now, just seeing so many great basketball minds and the coaching positions that they're in is really unique. But another thing that stands out about Golden State is the fact that I would argue that they also have one of the most elite benches as well. I mean, you have a Janelle Salon who has 12 points in this game against the Wings. Tip Hayes has 10 points. And in total, you have a 43-point bench night for Golden State. And again, we talked about their depth before, but again, when you have a player, I feel like it's just not credited enough sometimes to have everybody really on the same page like that. I talked about this a little bit yesterday with the Fever and how they've been able to have some bench play come in and really play significant moments as well. But Golden State has done such an excellent job at really making sure that everybody can be on the same page. But again, when you have weapons like a Tiffany Hayes or a Janelle Salon on your bench who could absolutely be a starter anywhere else, it's just kind of like you have everything. Like you truly do.
100%. And even with Tiffany Hayes, she had a just past half court, like logo 3-pointer to end the first quarter. And that's what really triggered this Golden State offensive barrage. And again, a pressing defense that you saw in the second quarter that really allowed them to build up this lead. In the second quarter, Valkyries outscored the Wings 24-9. When you can hold the Dallas Wings to a single-digit quarter, that's just so impressive. And it was Tip Hayes that really sparked that. And you bring up Janelle Salon as well, who she's right now the runaway 6th player of the year, just with her contributions off the bench. Even a player like Caitlin Chan, who has really taken another leap this season in her career. I think you can look a lot towards her development at Athletes Unlimited as well. But this team is just so well-rounded. There really aren't many drop-offs, and it's a lot of those drop-offs in the mindset because they're all bought into what the organization wants to do top down, and those are the most dangerous groups.
Caitlin Chen has really been incredibly efficient as well. She made 7 of 10 shots in this game. I feel like she's just really utilized the minutes that she's gotten and really just showing how she was, in her first season with the Valkyries, kind of up and down throughout the season, just this like load of confidence that has come to her and how efficient that she's been capable of being. But what it was kind of funny is that she did also mention that she offered some insight about, her former UConn teammates with an AZ Fudd and Paige Beckers going into this game. So she probably helped develop that defensive game plan a little bit. But when we're looking at Dallas right now, who, again, have had their struggles, but you kind of felt like they were going to bounce back. And it did show a relative sign of bouncing back, but they are now dropping once again. What do you think that this Dallas Wings team still needs to do to get back on track before now they're kind of putting themselves in an uncomfortable position to be even in a playoff sort of ranking?
Yeah, when you look at the Wings are 2-7 since the All-Star break and have lost 8 of their last 11 after going on a 6-game win streak. That's not the position that you want to be when you're really kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of playoffs positioning and securing a playoff spot. And you can look some of it about towards the injuries that Dallas has experienced. I do think in this game against Golden State, not having, or Jess Shepard was maybe shaking off a little bit of rust. She missed a couple of games due to injury. This was her first one back, and she wasn't as dominant as we've seen her be in the past. So that you have that right there. AZ Fudd is another player that did not play in this game, and we already know what she offers when you talk about, really fantastic 3-and-D players, but also with her ability to get to the basket, pull up in the mid-range, just make smart plays on both ends of the floor. That's a major loss that you're experiencing. But even looking, again, another person in the backcourt, Zaza James did not play in this matchup as well due to a lower left leg injury. And those, whenever you can have a lot of injuries pile up in one position, and for this Dallas Wing team, you're really looking at the guard position specifically, that's when the burden gets carried a lot more by your starters, which at this point in the season, when, it's starting maybe to drag on a little bit and you're really getting into the grind of this year, that's when you really want your depth as much as possible, which Dallas does not have right now. And a couple games ago, head coach Jose Fernandez called out his team post-game, said that there just needs to be more accountability amongst the players. And the last time he did that, it lit a fire under them. They were able to turn their season around a bit, but not having the same result this time. So they still are a very solid team, very talented team. I mean, when you have the type of roster that they do, you're going to win some games, even if it isn't pretty. It's just a matter of making it look a lot more fluid and clicking maybe when you have a piece or two missing.
Yeah, they've lost 8 of their last 11 games. They did have a 6-game winning streak prior to that. And when Arike Agubawale was asked about the biggest slide after this All-Star break, she said, sometimes teams come back better, sometimes teams come back worse. Obviously, they've had some injuries, but they can't just put the blame on that. But you also can't take away the fact that injuries do impact the team very significantly. And when you have some players that you really rely on that are kind of getting hurt at a crunch time for you, it's absolutely difficult, especially going up against some teams that maybe already gone through that wave of injury and have been able to come back. But Golden State does clinch a playoff spot with this win. The Wings will host Chicago on Saturday, and the Valkyries will host Minnesota on Friday night. But stick with us because there are some exciting games coming up tonight, and one of the big ones being between the Atlanta Dream and the Las Vegas Aces. Support for today's episode comes from Wayfair. Whether you're refreshing one room, getting ready for a new season, or finally replacing that piece of furniture you've been putting off, Wayfair makes it easy to find something that fits your home, your style, and your budget. You can shop furniture and decor across a wide range of price points with quality materials and pieces designed to stand up to real life. And with Wayfair Verified, product specialists hand vet select products through a 10-point quality inspection, looking at things like materials, functionality, features, and even how long they take to build. That's a big one for me because as somebody who is moving, all the moving and all the building and things like that, I want to know how long it's going to take to build, especially if it's going to be all on me to do so. So Wayfair provides some solid help when it comes to that. And if you're trying to narrow down what to buy, Wayfair gives you plenty of real shopper feedback to work with. You can browse more than 20 million verified 5-star reviews, along with real customer photos and feedback to help you shop with more confidence. So join Wayfair Rewards today to get 5% back on every purchase and start saving on your next home upgrade. Head to wayfair.com to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. All right, Atlanta going up against Las Vegas, and this is kind of a game where both teams need to prove themselves to an extent. The Aces having a little bit of a dip themselves, being able to bounce back. The Atlanta Dream kind of missing the opportunity to get a win against the Fever in just some late game missed opportunities. What stands out to you most about this matchup?
Just kind of how exactly you put it with the Aces, they, after hitting a little bit of a rough mid-season stretch, they managed to bounce back specifically with those wins against the Washington Mystics when they were considered one of the hottest teams in the league. So you would like to see the Aces continue on that momentum. But even for a player like Asia Wilson, who we're so used to her greatness, but I feel like we haven't heard her name as much recently when you're talking about who's leading the Aces in these games. It's honestly been a lot of Jackie Young we've seen recently, who, I mean, that's a great player anyway. So you can't even say too much about maybe being the 1B to Jackie Young's 1A in this recent stretch. But for the Aces, like you said, they'll definitely want to bounce back after losing their last game to the Minnesota Lynx. They've had plenty of rest, and especially for Asia going up against the front court of the Atlanta Dream, like an Angel Reese, even like a Medina Okot, gonna she's going to want to get her own this game, I would anticipate. But for the Atlanta Dream, just looking at the most recent injury report as of 10 a.m. Eastern time, you have Jordan Canada listed as probable due to illness, and she missed the last game versus the Fever. She is such an X factor for their team, and I think not as many people notice, but when you're looking at who's going to contain some backcourt guards defensively, like a Chelsea Gray or a Jackie Young, that is who you look towards. And offensively, she's actually one of the leading assisters in the league, which a lot of people, again, don't really recognize. And so she helps the Dream offense flow a lot more. So when you're talking about those late game execution plays, maybe it's not as much one-on-one ISO. It's actually Canada being able to set something up and create it. So she'll be a big difference maker going into this matchup. But Bree Jones is also listed as out due to a left leg injury herself. And that it's going to be another big blow because you're losing some size in that, and you don't want to lose size when you're having to match up against a player like A'ja Wilson.
Yeah, and it is interesting because, again, we do know that A'ja Wilson has been held to such a high standard that she did create on her own. Obviously, this is a team that needed a second half surge last year to get to the push that they needed to win the entire thing. Not that they're out of that question at all, because they are also just the second team to have clinched a postseason berth again. But you still have A'ja Wilson, who obviously is the engine of this team, but she is averaging a league best 26 points, as well as 9.6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal, and shooting 52% from the field. And again, it is just kind of funny because sometimes I just feel like it's not highlighted enough, and maybe that's on us to do more. But
maybe so.
Yeah, but it's just, you see that she's literally having one of the most elite seasons once again. But I think it's when the Aces are overall doing fantastic, it does come down to the question of kind of like, oh, well, what did A'ja do that game? Well, she's only been held to 15 points twice this entire season. But when you take a look at Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray, you also have Jackie Young, who's averaging 18 points and 6 assists per game. Chelsea Gray averaging 12 and 7. So they always seem like they are in a good spot. It's just kind of more of the execution at certain points and getting it all done and pieced together. Taking a look at another game, we have the New York Liberty going up against the Chicago Sky. The Liberty, another team that are, again, we've talked about before, trying to stay afloat throughout the rest of the season, essentially, especially when you're still playing without a lot of, significant pieces in Asatu Sabally, in Leonie Fibish, but they have won 8 of their last 10 games. They've been very solid. On the other side, Chicago Sky did have a bounce back win against Seattle. However, this is still a team that is out without a Skylar Diggins, but instead of being listed as out today, Sydney Taylor is listed as questionable.
Yes, 100%. So looking at the Liberty, you mentioned that they've won 8 of their last 10. And in the month of August, they've had a pretty light schedule. Excuse me. They've had a pretty light schedule. Looking at some of the teams that they've beaten the Storm twice, the Mercury. They beat the Aces, but the Aces rested basically all of their starters. Lost to the Fever, but then they beat the Sparks, Sun, and now going up against the Sky. And for the Liberty, who are fighting to stay in the playoffs and try to get a good positioning for themselves, these are the games that you look at that you really want to make sure they can win, so that the teams that are under them, they just keep them under them. And not so much in their benefit, Leonie Fibish, Satu Sabally are still listed as out, and Sabrina Ionescu is listed as questionable. So this team just can't get away from the injury bug, unfortunately. But for this guy, being able to have Sydney Taylor back would be huge. She is just been their absolute spark plug this entire season. And this is a game, honestly, that the Chicago Sky could sneak up and get against the New York Liberty, because for this guy, these are the games that they just managed, like I said, to sneak up on some of their opponents, use that competitive edge to try to steal from their opponents.
Yeah, 100%. So we will see what comes of that game. We also have the Indiana Fever going up against the Toronto Tempo. Indiana Fever have been looking really strong. We talk about another team that has had some solid depth, but when we're looking at their overtime win against the Atlanta Dream, a player that really stood out to me, again, who is not always going to be highlighted throughout the box score, but did have 20 points in that win, was Michaela Timpson. And we talked about it before. She just does a lot of the intangibles for this team that has so many great players, so many elite players. But when you need somebody to kind of just set it off a little bit, I feel like she's been able to come in and provide that.
She has. And I feel like against a pretty straightforward or during a pretty straightforward game just between the Fever and the Tempo, this leans heavily in Indiana's favor. This is where you can look at a player like Michaela Timpson and hope that she can recreate the magic that we saw last game and do that consistently. Because when you compare that with an interior that already consists of an Aaliyah Boston, of Mo Billings, that just makes the Fever that much more dangerous. And Timpson, she fits in perfectly to the style of play. She's a very athletic, stretch big, has insane hops. She, I believe early in the season, like pinned a shot off the backboard. So she is very explosive. And with the way that the Fever like to play is very fast paced, up tempo, she fits right into that style because she runs the floor well, a great rim runner, and just very active on the glass.
Speaking of up tempo, talking about the tempo, what again, in terms of them being on a 10-game losing streak right now, again, obviously, when you're talking about a team that has been hit hard with injuries, this is one of them. But how can they, to an extent, try to keep up with the Fever?
Well, one of the bright spots that you can definitely look at is Brittany Sykes being listed as probable for this matchup. So you would absolutely love to have her back. She's someone that, has been out for a couple weeks due to injury that looked pretty bad at first. Like when I first saw it, I was scared for the worst, but seeing her come back, I think hopefully that helps to give the entire team an added boost. And Sykes, if she can provide a lot of defense, she is incredibly long, incredibly athletic. She'll be able to help contain some of the perimeter players of the Indiana Fever out there. And then offensively, she just provides so much, again, with her speed, athleticism, a very downhill player. She can get to the rim, really hit that mid-range. And one thing about her is she's going to get to the free throw line too, which the Indiana Fever have shown struggles keeping teams off the free throw line. So she could definitely take advantage of that there.
That was a big thing that Stephanie White said in their game against Atlanta. Part of it being turnovers, even though they really weren't that bad in turnovers against the Dream. They definitely forced the Dream into way more turnovers and capitalized off of it. But it was also defending with discipline and not allowing teams to get to the free throw line. But truly, that's for a lot of teams throughout the league. But we will see what comes of that matchup as well. Taking a look at what the standings are looking like right now, the power rankings, to no surprise, start with the Minnesota Lynx, who have, continued to just keep pushing it. Like, once you push it, why not just keep taking it up another notch? I think that's the mindset that the Minnesota Lynx have. Taking a look at, obviously we talk about Olivia Miles a lot. We talk about Fee and just her ability to come back. She's had 39 combined points and has scored in double figures in all 9 outings since her return. Those 39 points have just been within this last week. But highlighting in Natasha Howard, she's registered double-doubles in both games and combined for 27 points and 23 rebounds while shooting 60% from the field. She's somebody that we highlighted a lot towards the beginning of the year, and then maybe not as much a little bit as of late. I guess how she sort of made her reemergence to an extent, maybe also having to figure out how to replay alongside an Afisa Collier now and still be able to shine.
She's just so savvy. She has a ton of that. I've been around for a couple years at this point. I know what I need to do, air to her. And offensively, she's just so quick with it. And the Lynx's entire offense, you never want to let the ball stick because you have so many weapons on the floor. And so when she catches it, she knows exactly what she wants to do, whether that's shoot and score, dribble and score, or dribble, kick it out, whatever it is. But she does that very fast and plays really well within the flow of Minnesota's offense, and just so extremely active on the offensive glass as well. That's a huge way that Minnesota is able to keep possessions alive, keep that onslaught going, and for Natasha Howard to generate some of her own points herself. So she's just been doing a fantastic job. And with that kind of smart veteran leadership as well, she's just been a huge add to this Minnesota Lynx. And I keep saying it, but she's really one of like the top offseason acquisitions that I feel like no one is discussing as much as they should be.
100%. Taking a look at Golden State again, we won't overly highlight them since we kind of already did. But we talked about Gabby Williams. Tip Hayes has been really significant, but I kind of want to highlight Veronica Burton again, because obviously she was the most improved player, has still done fantastic numbers for Golden State, but maybe hasn't been highlighted as much either. What have you seen from Veronica Burton again this season that has just continued to allow Golden State to be at the level it is on the offensive side, as well as how great she is as a defender?
Well, I would keep mentioning her leadership, and you spoke about her defense, but I would say one of the Valkyries' biggest Achilles heels last season was their turnovers. This year, they're one of the best teams in the league at ball security, and it's so much due to Veronica Burton. And I even looked during the offseason with a lot of her unrivaled work, where she is becoming even more of an offensive weapon to score and play make herself, but just be at the helm of the offense and control everything. Like, for the Valkyries, the offense starts with her, the defense starts with her. And she's just really also been doing a fantastic job solidifying the Valkyries as one of the best teams in the WNBA.
I like that. It starts it literally on both ends of the court. It starts with her. You gotta defend her hard, but then she's gonna go and defend you hard, and I love that. Just kind of rounding out our top three in terms of power rankings, we have the Indiana Fever because they went 3-0 this past week. Obviously, Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell. We've had some significant boosts from Michaela Timpson, but I guess just what can the Fever continue to do to just maintain the level that they are playing at?
I mean, I look at Kelsey Mitchell on this 20-point streak. I was a little nervous during the dream game, but since it went into overtime, she was able to continue that 20-point streak. So I was like, okay, we're good. But keep doing her magic for Caitlin Clark. She's been on a really incredible stretch herself, scoring and facilitating a lot. I would say for the Fever, just continue to have your top players play at the level that they are. Make sure all the supporting cast is fulfilling their role. And just those little things, continue to try to work on clean up. So like their ball security, not turning the ball over, definitely be something that they could improve upon. And like Coach White said after the dream game, just being disciplined defensively to not send teams to a free throw line.
That's going to be the key to the game for a lot of these teams coming up, especially as they are seeing each other for the third, fourth, whatever time this season, just making sure that everyone's just keeping it cool and getting it done. But as always, thank you so much for watching Locked On Women's Basketball. We'll be back tomorrow recapping the games tonight and taking a look at the rest of the week.